Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a fun one. Today we have with us Tom Sylvester with 2X. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks, Lee. Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about 2X. How are you serving folks?
Absolutely. So the main thing we look at with 2X is helping 6- and 7-figure business owners really free themselves from the day of their business, turn it into a consistent machine that is running without them so that they're free to grow the business and ultimately achieve their personal goals through building the business to meet their needs.
So now, do you specialize in certain industries, or is this kind of industry agnostic?
The methods that we use are industry agnostic, but we find most of our clients are in a fast-growing business space. So this could be online business, this could be service-based, this could be e-commerce, but anything where the business has the ability to scale up quick when they put the right team, systems, and strategies in place.
Now, have you found that most entrepreneurs are kind of making similar mistakes, and it's just a matter of just them becoming aware of it and putting the systems in place, or is every kind of business its own adventure?
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing. One of the things we talk about all the time is, business is business is business. And regardless of the industry or anything else, what it really comes down to is simplifying things down. Most business owners are trying to do too many things at once. Really thinking about what does the business have to look like in order to achieve your goals? Because we need to make sure that, one, we have clarity on what it is you're ultimately trying to achieve, both in your personal life and in your business, and then making sure that you structure the business to do that. And very often what most business owners are doing is they're going after too many things at once. They're trying to do too many things themselves, and they're not actually thinking like the CEO. So what we need to do is kind of have them take a step back, get clear on where they want to go, and then structure the business so that it can then support them in making that happen.
So now, are there things that when the business owner is talking to you and your team about where they're at, where they're frustrated, where they're struggling, are you looking in the similar place every time, or is it kind of different for each business?
Yeah, so we use a similar approach because there's usually common areas, but then we cater what we end up doing for each business. So what it kind of comes down to is the first thing we're looking to do with the business is simplify. So most business owners have way too many things going on. So we're looking at what is the 80-20 and where can we cut or simplify the business so we can focus more on what the value is. Then what we look to do is make sure they have a solid foundation in place. And very often business owners are trying to scale without really optimizing who are they serving, what is their core offer, making sure they have the right price point and positioning in place. And then we really want to make sure that they're delivering a great result. So we always start with fulfillment, because if a business is creating raving fans through their product or service, then it's easy to build the rest of the business around that. But far too often, business owners are so focused on just getting new leads that they're not taking care of their existing customers and falling short of creating raving fans.
So is that really the engine you need in order to help them be successful? If they don't have a kind of a recurring supply of raving fans, then it's going to be difficult to scale?
Exactly, because then what ends up happening is you get into these business models where it's churn and burn, right? So oftentimes business owners come to us and they say, if I just had more leads, everything would work. And it's funny because that comes up so often. But when we look at it, we're like, well, if you were just creating raving fans, then those people would stay with you longer, pay you more money, refer you to their friends. And that's a much more sustainable business than always having to go and find new customers.
So now when you're telling someone that, and that's kind of a harsh truth, right? Like, because they probably thought they've had this figured out. And now you're saying, hey, your baby's ugly. How do you kind of help them understand that it's not the end of the world? We can still work with this, but we just got to figure some things out.
Yeah, what we've found is that most business owners, by the time they come and talk to us, they have likely already worked with other coaches or done other programs, and they just feel like something's not connected, so they already know that something's kind of missing, which is why they feel like they're stuck and they haven't been able to scale their business. So they're usually aware that there's something missing. And what we do a pretty thorough audit and analysis of their business where they're getting some clarity just through the questions we're asking. And then we kind of bring it back and say, and here's what we're seeing and here's what we recommend. So it's definitely a collaborative approach where we're extracting from them to kind of see what they're seeing, as well as then showing, hey, after working with hundreds of businesses, here's the approach we've seen and taken. Here's what we'd recommend for you. So usually it's less about calling their baby ugly and more about saying, why aren't you where you want to be? And let's help you identify a couple of those bottlenecks that we can focus on that will get you there.
But say they are struggling with the not having raving fans. So they have a base of business that's okay, but there maybe that base is solid, but they're not kind of growing that beyond that. How do you, what would be something you would do to help them simplify to kind of focus in on whatever their secret sauce is or their superpower in order to get it to start scaling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's two key frameworks that we utilize for this. The first one, we call it Model 1, and it's basically answering the questions, are you selling the right people, the right stuff, at the right price, with the right positioning, in a way that can scale? So what we're going to start doing is looking at each of those categories, and often we'll go back to their top 10 or 20 customers and say, all right, what are the commonalities there? And let's start really narrowing that down, because there's usually some small tweaks we can make to either their ideal target audience or their offer or even how they're positioned, just to help them stand out and make sure that they're creating raving fans. So we start with that. And then the second thing we do is what we call the gold mine. And what most business owners don't realize is that they have already probably created some raving fans. Maybe they're not all there yet, but they're sitting on a gold mine with the customers that they've worked with in the past, the customers they're currently working with. And there's usually an opportunity to go back to those customers. And if they were raving fans, see what support they need next. And if they weren't raving fans, to learn and understand where that gap was, turn them into raving fans, and then see what the next opportunity is. So very often it's looking at what you've already done or what you already have, in front of you, and then working on creating those into raving fans before we try to bring new people in.
So now in your process, are you actually kind of helping or are you just advising in terms of okay, let's identify, they have 100 customers. A good idea, like you just said, is let's go and have a real kind of deeper conversation with those 100 customers or 80 of those customers that are generating the most, so that we can see the kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, and how to kind of help them leverage that to kind of duplicate that audience. Are you doing that, or are you saying, hey, you should do that, and then here, ask each of these people 10 questions?
Yeah. So, what I would call us is more of an implementation program. So with traditional coaching, the coach is doing a lot of questioning and having the client kind of come up with their own answers. We do a combination of coaching and consulting. So we're going to help clarify and bring awareness to that business owner of what they need to do. And then we're going to give them some consulting and training on how to actually do it, and then enable them and their team to actually go and do that work. So we wouldn't be doing the customer interviews in that case, but what we would do is show the CEO or show somebody on their team how to go about that process and point them in the right direction.
So it is a combination of both coaching and consulting.
Correct. And from my experience kind of living in both of those spaces over the years, I think it always has to be, because if you're doing just coaching but not consulting, you might raise awareness, but you're not actually guiding people on the next step. And if you're doing consulting where you're telling people, but you're not first doing the coaching and understanding where the opportunity is, you might be pointing them in the wrong direction. So I think the best is when you really combine both of those together.
Now, is your solution best for small teams rather than a solopreneur, or can it work for both folks?
It can work for really any business, but it's really targeted at the 500K to 5 million range. Because what we find at that point is the business has initially validated their offer. They likely have a team in place, and they're getting to the point now of where that business owner can't do everything. So there's always shifts when you kind of go to different levels in business. So when we tend to work best when a business owner has a team, is realizing they can't do everything themselves, and they need to really elevate as the CEO and start, instead of doing everything in the business, figuring out who can I put in place and what system can I build so that it's then running without me.
So these folks have already kind of got that escape velocity, and they're just kind of frustrated, or they plateaued.
Yep, basically.
So now for you, what's the most rewarding part of the job?
Yeah, I think it's allowing business owners to see that they don't have to be a slave to their business. So my quick backstory is I started out as a software developer, and I realized I didn't want to work for the next 45 years. And so I set a goal to quote unquote retire by 35. And it was a big challenge to get my wife on board. And then as we became parents, to make the business work while not sacrificing life. And so once my wife and I both quit our jobs, what we found was that we were really good at building businesses that didn't require us. But when we started talking to a lot of our friends, we saw that they were working a lot more in their business than they were even at a job, and often making a lot less. So I actually never planned to be a coach, but I was then called to basically say, hey, we're really good at being able to build the businesses that don't require us. And I see this as such a challenge out there. And especially with COVID coming up the last year, being able to help business owners not only grow their business and free up their time, but then the ripple effect from that, because that helps them, it helps their families, it helps their team, it helps their customers. And that impact across the board really is what is going to get us out of COVID and help with the economy. So the ripple effect that can happen just by helping one business owner is huge.
Now, do you find that you're attracting emerging franchises, or is this kind of the person that has their own business and maybe they have different kind of locations, but it's not necessarily a franchise? Because we do a show where we talk to a lot of franchisors, and it sounds like you're attacking some of the same challenges that they might have as they grow their franchise.
Yeah, I would say at this point, the majority of our clients are individuals that are growing their business. But it's been interesting because we've worked with a couple of franchisors, and to your point, it's a lot of the same things, because what we tell any business we work with is we actually want to set you up kind of like a franchisor, right? So we want to make sure that you're building the blueprint and the model for this business. And then part of the way for you to scale up is to be able to replicate that, whether it's with more locations or more team members or whatever. So we've actually found, like I said, at the end of the day, business is business. And what we're looking to do is to build that blueprint that will work for them as they scale.
So if somebody wants to learn more and tap into your expertise, or have someone on your team give them a call, or maybe consult with them, what is the best way to get a hold of you? What's the website?
Absolutely. So our core website is 2x.co, but we actually have a free audiobook for anyone that's interested called From 6 to 7 Figures. And that really walks through a lot of the basic strategies that we take business owners through. So people can find that at 6to7book.com.
Good stuff. Well, congratulations on all the success. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lee.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.